It's our year-end show, and as tradition has it, Bobby Slayton stops through. Slayton is a brilliant comic. He's called the pit bull of comedy because he is very aggressive on stage. He talks about where that came from. For some reason, I find Bobby utterly charming and likable. And I know you will too, some of you. This time last year, he was about to head down to Hawaii with Bill Maher, Sarah Silverman, and a crew that included Joe Walsh and Willie Nelson. I'll let him tell the story. We talk about Vegas in the old days, Vegas in the new days, and life under COVID-19. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for continually checking in on the podcast. In the new year, there'll be much more podcast content. I'm looking forward to some great shows that are already in the pipeline in the new year. Let's get started.
This is The Edge.
The advantage, it means.
Hey, look, I just spit on me for no reason.
That's horrible.
Is there some comfort in uncertainty, do you think?
You're a degenerate.
Because Australian Shepherds need action.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is The Edge.
That's a self-loathing term that I use.
Oh, got it.
You're listening to The Edge with Mark Thompson.
It is a tradition, and I think it's a tradition that only I am aware of. Bobby Slayton comes through the podcast every holiday season.
Well, I was just thinking about that. I'm Bobby Slayton, by the way. But first of all, what's interesting, it is kind of, I knew it was an annual thing we did. How long have we been doing it for, like 5, 10 years? 10?
I want to say maybe 6 or 7 years.
And every time I do it, it's either the podcast or the radio show, you're always at a different station, a different place. You're always getting fired like a fugitive. You're like a guy on the run. Every time I go to the studio, you go, no, that's not the right studio. Every year, it's been, I think for 10 years, we did it out of your old house, we do it out of this house, we do it out of the studio, another studio, all over the place.
I never thought of that. You're right. You're like a guy on the run.
It's only,
look, we would do this at iHeartRadio probably.
Right.
But for the pandemic, we've had to, move around, and we could still use iHeart, but it would be difficult, and we would be in the same room and not socially distanced. What we've done now is we've set up an elaborate outdoor, socially distanced setup that was honestly, it's an arrangement Mondo from iHeartRadio actually came over and set up for us.
You did this, wait, have you had other guests?
No, we're road testing it with you. So
Wow.
Bobby's at one end of a table.
Right.
I'm at the other end of the table. Mondo is also in the mix. Mondo is immunocompromised.
Yeah, I know.
He had a heart transplant.
Yeah, but the show's not about him. It's about me. So I'm sorry to hear that. Let's move on. Everybody's having a bad day. Toughen up, okay? Big pussy.
Everybody's having a bad day.
No, you know what, though? When I hear about stuff like that, seriously, the whole pandemic thing has been, I actually am doing a little moratorium on podcasts because so many people are doing them now.
Right.
And for years I didn't want to do it because I did so much radio. In the 40 years I did stand-up comedy, there was always traveling on the road and doing radio, doing podcasts, generally the same thing. And then, getting up and doing either K-Rock or your show or Heidi and Frank in L.A. when I'm plugging the Comedy Magic Club, and so much radio. And then people say, yeah, you should do a podcast. And, you got to remember there was guys like Joe Rogan and Mark Maron who were really on the ground floor of this and really, you know how much money they're making? Yeah, and you know how many years it took them to make that money and how much competition they have that people can't listen to. I remember I did Gilbert Gottfried's podcast about 3-4 years ago. Great podcast. Always wanted to do it. Went to New York. It was really... And I get people now, hey, I just heard you on Gilbert's podcast, because people are either still discovering people or catching up. And it's almost like Netflix, my girlfriend goes, what do you want to watch tonight? I go, there's so many things in the queue. There's so many things piled up and backlogged that, it takes a while to catch up.
And that's have you seen thing that goes on. Did you see this on Netflix?
Right.
Did you see that? And there are things that are sort of the moment, like The Undoing, the Nicole Kidman thing. That became a big thing.
That's on my list.
Right.
And the Queen's Gambit, which you just like. We can go on and on and on.
No, but my point is, so your list gets defaulted over to those things, and now your list falls further down. So by the time you double back to, in your case, like the Gilbert Gottfried podcast or whatever, in the case of the podcast, yeah, you're right. It can be something that was 3 years ago, an episode with Bobby Slayton.
Right. Well, that's why I still get that. I just heard you on this and that. But anyway, the point is that so many people have asked me to do podcasts since everybody's home and everybody's sequestered away in quarantine. So I was, and I just got tired of doing them. First of all, I had nothing to plug. And 99% of those podcasts, nobody ever, hey, I heard you on this podcast. At least I do yours. You get a few of your imaginary listeners that'll text me a few months later. Hey, I heard you on Thompson's podcast. But there are these shows that nobody either they didn't like me or they just didn't contact me. But anyway, I wanted to do I figured, okay, I have nothing else to do. And you go on some of these podcasts, and some of them are so stupid. And then you get these guys who are comics or comic wannabes who try to top you or stay up with you or be funnier than you. And it becomes this competition, you know?
Yeah.
And
You're making a really good point. What Bobby's saying about, and I didn't really, it's odd, it didn't occur to me. I sort of see the podcast universe as this, what are the things, the protozoa or amoebas that split and split and split and just to overtake everything. And that kind of is what was happening before COVID-19. But the point Bobby's making is a real good one, which is with COVID-19, everybody's home and podcasts are now so easy to set up. Like we have this elaborate setup with, you know, an engineer here and we're outdoors and socially distanced. But the reality is if you've got an iPhone or an Android, you can have a podcast. And people who are now homebound are starting their own podcast. So take that doubling of podcast numbers, add to it COVID-19 and people just starting their own podcast, and you have a universe full of people. Some of the podcasts are good and some of the podcasts are like, well, you're talking about. It's just somebody in their living room and, you know, they're talking about different kinds of, you know, whatever, turpentine.
By the way, yes, a good point. Let me digress for one moment. I think when you call it COVID-19, I don't think you need the 19. I think COVID people. It's not like Plan 9 from outer space. Which plan is it? The one to blow up the Earth? No, that's Plan 7. This is Plan 9. People know. I think if you say COVID, people are going to go.
Yeah,
is that the good COVID or the bad COVID? Which COVID is he talking about?
Help me with a joke. Now, like I'm doing that, like making. It's not a joke, but making something funny, like when I'm going and you end up with somebody in their living room talking about, and I need a reference that's kind of funny. And I couldn't think of it as soon as I said turpentine, which is not funny. So what would you have said?
Wait. Okay, first of all, I'm so bad at this. You know, okay, tell me the setup again.
Okay, so I'm saying, you know, there are all these podcasts, but with COVID, everybody's now and the ability to do podcasts, everybody's sitting around in their living room, and you end up with somebody just sitting around in their living room, and they're doing a podcast about, and I didn't have a reference, like I should have said Chinese food or there's a reference, and so I just said about, I wanted something stupid and absurd and shallow, but I couldn't think of it, so I just said turpentine.
Because you're really good at that stuff. You know, look, why don't you stick with the weather? I think you're way beyond anything. You know, you start getting into territory that's really
I don't know.
beyond your
I just
control
felt like
and
a
abilities.
great comic mind. But see, it comes easily. I have to.
Not so much anymore, you know. But no, what I was going to tell you about all these podcasts, the reason I stopped doing them, and yours, I felt like not only do I not want to go to somebody's house, but, you know, I'm afraid and paranoid like everybody else, but at the same time, it's not like we're hugging and sharing a fork or, you know, chopsticks. But the point being that so all these guys would call me up, and either they want to talk about Trump, which I don't want to talk about ever because it's enough already, and I certainly don't have any jokes about him because they've all been done every day, or, hey, what do comics do during COVID? You know, what are you guys doing to stay busy? And it's the same questions, the same thing. And I just got tired of talking about it. But I figured, okay, if I come over and do your show, I get out of the house. I haven't worked in almost a year outside of my, you know, SKECHERS commercials you called me about.
I love hearing
by
you
the
on
way,
the SKECHERS spot.
I ever bring my SKECHERS water with me.
Bobby is the voice of SKECHERS.
Which is very interesting, yeah. And they are my favorite shoes, by the way.
I remember hearing you on other spots before and seeing you at ICM back in the old days we used to audition.
Right.
And the great thing about ICM in the old days, now you audition and you put it on MP3 and you send it. So you don't ever go in. And now, of course, with COVID, you don't go in at all.
But, yeah, right.
But even before COVID, everybody set up with their own MP3 and their own recording thing at home, and they just read the copy and they send it in. But in the old days, when Bobby was auditioning at ICM, when I first came to LA and I was auditioning for voiceover at ICM, you would see stars there at ICM who would be there for voiceover. You'd see Ron Perlman and Roddy McDowell.
Right.
And I remember being struck, and Mark Hamill, of course, is a well-known voiceover guy.
You'd see a lot of people. I'd see Lorraine Newman. She was with the company.
Yep,
and, you know,
Lorraine.
years after SNL. But I'd see these old character actors that some of them, you know, you didn't know what you knew them from. And it wasn't like you could, somebody, their name, it wasn't like you had an iPhone. You could look up his IMDb and find out everything the guy's done. But remember, I was a young comic, and I was getting a fair amount of work considering how many celebrities and stars and professional voices were there.
Well, also because your voice is really specific, and, you know, you're not going to, they're either going to go for you or not. And you have it, and you're set apart from everybody else, is my point. That's why I would think you get a lot of work.
Well, what happened, not that anybody cares, what happened with the voiceover business, because I don't get a lot of calls anymore, I would do some animation. I've done stuff for Disney, and I did Family Guy, and I did a few other pilots, and whatever. But basically, what they do now, and Disney especially, is they look for celebrities. You know, you get like Buzz Lightyear's Tim Allen, and of course Tom Hanks, and you get Eddie Murphy and Shrek. So they look for celebrity voices, Or what the voiceover people do now, and you probably know this, they look for a guy that could do like 5 voices. Can you do, we don't need Bobby Slayton because you could do a New York Cowboy. Yeah, you could do a taxi driver, and you could do a Sopranos voice. You could do Donald Duck. They want a guy that could do the character animation and everything. So, one size, 5 guys, do one thing. It's like a little Swiss Army knife. So I don't get that many calls anymore. But I would get calls always. They'd have me come in. It was either for a rat, a junkyard dog, a New York taxi driver. Hey, what kind of pizza is this? But those kind of characterizations of voices, there are guys that do it better. I don't really do. I do my voice. So some comic told me he was at, I don't know if it was our agency, reading for something, and the breakdown of the character was, we're looking for a Bobby Slayton type voice. I go, well, what do you call Bobby Slayton? I'm not dead. I'm very easy to work with. I don't charge extra money. I work for the same as everybody else. But really, I mean, it was kind of in a way a compliment. Sure. Kind of in a way like, hey, what am I, chopped liver? It was kind of an insult, But it was a phenomenon at ICM where if they mention you in the description of what they're looking for, almost by definition, you won't get the spot. We used to put it up on a bulletin board, people's different name, looking for, and I had it happen 3 times because my voice was on a lot of Fox stuff at the time, right, with all that stylized, right, tonight, a shootout, cops got to do a shootout, right, world's scariest police chases, all of that shit I was doing, that type of read, people literally referenced it. And I read for the same spots with my name on it, and I didn't get it. None of them. Okay. I didn't get it once. I'm glad it wasn't just me then, because I found that to be really odd. No, it was talked about. It's like one of the running jokes. They ask for you, and then when you read it, they don't hire you. It's bizarre. Well, those days are over for me because I've not gotten a call from the agency. They said it's a different agency now, but they have not called me in about 2 or 3 years. Well, how did SKECHERS happen? I'm friends with the people at SKECHERS. That's great. And I've mentioned them on the radio. How do you know the guys who own SKECHERS? Yes, I just know them. The way I met the CEO of the company was, I remember the Sky Bar. I don't know if it's still there. One of the pretentious. At the Mondrian, yeah. Yeah, okay. And you probably hung out there because you like that kind of crap. Oh, yeah. They had a party. More pretentious, the better. They had a Christmas party 25 years ago. And they hired me to entertain, and I didn't do a lot of parties. It's really one of the most difficult things for a stand-up comic. The money's usually good, but a party, I mean, I've had some brutal deaths. That and opening for rock and roll bands, and I've had a lot of experiences. Opening for rock and roll bands was always interesting because if you did okay, that meant you killed. If you actually got their attention, you did fine. If you got some laughs, you did phenomenal. You're not going to get a standing ovation opening for, in the old days, Eddie Money and the Tubes. And I mean, I opened for everybody, B.B. King and Ray Charles. I went for Temptations. Can we double back and talk about that? I've never heard those stories. That's a whole nother. Yeah, some of those shows were great. If you knew you were opening for a jazz group or in the Bay Area, because that's where I got started, when they brought me on stage, people knew who I was. Knew you, of course. So they loved you. If I was opening for the local guys like Huey Lewis or the Tubes, or the Doobie Brothers, maybe, in the early days. I'm trying to remember who else. Anyway, there were a lot of local bands that I opened up for, and it usually went pretty well because I was on the Alex Bennett radio show and people knew me. It was a small town, and a lot of musicians came out of it. And it always went pretty well if I opened up for, like, Ray Charles or a jazz band because it was older adults who would give you a chance. If you weren't funny, they'd start giving you crap. But you have that 3-4 minute leeway to state your case and get a laugh. But anyway, by the way, did you meet B.B. King? No, I don't think. Oftentimes in these situations, you just don't meet the headliner, do you? No. It's interesting. I opened up for Ray Charles, and I avoided him. I was a young comic. He had his entourage with him, and I did 2 shows at his club. Remember the late Phil Elwood, who loved me. He was a writer for the San Francisco Examiner. He came in one night, and God bless the late Phil Elwood, but he was like a little drunk, and he was kind of sleeping. He was watching me, and I really bombed. I really didn't do very well. And Ray Charles came on, and Ray Charles killed. And I went to the back to kind of, kiss up to Phil a little. Hey, it was a tough crowd, and I tried my best. And he goes, "Oh, you were great, man." And then he proceeded to fall asleep during Ray Charles' whole show. And then the next day there was a review in the paper how great I was, and Ray Charles, wasn't very good. And I felt, that's another thing where I felt good about the review, but I felt bad because none of it was true.
That's great.
But then again, I got my share of when I killed and the writer hated me, so it all evens out in the end. But anyway, when I did...
Can I just, because somebody else on this podcast opened for Ray Charles and tells this story. I'll shorten the story immensely. It was Fritz Coleman,
right,
and it was the Universal Amphitheater. And he said, I have one request in agreeing to do it. I'm very excited, very honored, but I want a picture with Mr. Charles, please. And they said, okay, well, make sure you get it. And Fritz revisited that request several times before the show.
Right.
Show goes down, Fritz does his thing, Ray Charles does his thing, and Fritz goes backstage with his little camera. It was pre-iPhone, you know. And Ray Charles comes off, and as you suggest, he's got a lot of people with him. He's got like a crew, and they kind of line the way. Fritz is sort of there in the line trying to see him. There is a Cadillac sitting there at the loading dock. Charles walked off stage into the Cadillac, and Fritz is sort of waving the photo. I was going to get a pic, and, no one even acknowledges him. Ray Charles gets into the car, pulls away, and is literally on the freeway while the crowd is still applauding him.
It sounds like a Rolling Stones, what they would do. They would disappear. The funny thing is, I did try to meet Ray Charles, and I went back after the second show, and I want to have a picture taken with him. And I want to say, just nice to meet you, because I've always been a tremendous fan. And he had left, but there's only 2 shows, and I'm not exaggerating or embellishing. There was an entire case, and it could have been his crew also, an entire case of bourbon or whatever. I mean, like 12 big bottles of booze that were emptied. And again, I don't think he drank them all, but maybe it's Phil Elwood who drank them, snuck back there and fell asleep in the back and reviewed the show. I don't really remember.
That's great.
Anyway, but the SKECHERS thing, what I was going to tell you was, so I go to the Sky Bar, and it's people from different countries, I think, were there. They're head reps from England and France, and some of them didn't speak English, and there were not a lot of people. And I said to the CEO of the company, I said, I don't think this is going to go well unless you can get people to sit down and listen. And he did, and it went fine. But the Sky Bar, after 10 minutes, is trying to shut me down because, there's no amplified music or anything after 9 o'clock at night. So I said, if you shut off my microphone, I'm going to scream at the top of my lungs, saying the most horrible things to your guests sitting up there in the VIP line. Okay, all right, just keep it down. Okay, but don't try to shut me down. 9 o'clock, you can't have any amplified sounds in Hollywood and whatever, some kind of bullshit. Anyway, so I became friends with the people who ran the company, and I would always mention them and wear my SKECHERS. And I don't remember how I got involved with the company, but I wrote a commercial for them at one point that they liked. And
it's
then,
a great, these spots cut through. See, that's what your voice does. It cuts through. And I think that really works. You pay attention. I'm not saying it makes you go out right away and buy SKECHERS, but you do listen to the spot. And if you hear it enough, yeah.
Well, go out and buy them because they're the best shoes out there. Okay, enough about
great.
that. And their water, by the way, their bottled water, terrific too.
I just remember. I just remember he's drinking a SKECHERS water. I just remembered at ICM during that time when we're talking about when different you said character actors you really couldn't place.
Oh, yeah.
I remember one thing and one moment that was so cool.
I'll tell you my fave after you go.
I met. This is going to be something that lands with some people and others are not going to know what I'm talking about, but. The guy who on Get Smart played Larrabee. The guy who played Larrabee, okay? And I to this day don't know his name.
Wow. I met Jaime the Robot. Jaime,
I know. But the thing with Larrabee is I was waiting. What they do is they have a main area, like a lounge area where everybody waits, and that's where you can, there's kind of a talking like it's a barbecue or cocktail party without cocktails. And then the guy comes going to go, Bobby, Mark, Marianne, I need you in booth 3. And so you go down and wait by the hall in booth 3. So I'm waiting there by, whatever booth it was, and there's Larrabee next to me. And I said, hey, man, I don't mean to bother you, but I just got to tell you, I'm such a fan. I thought that was just one of the great characters. You were just so terrific in that show. And he said, are you kidding? He said, it's no bother at all. He said, nobody knows who I am anymore. It's really terrific to hear from you.
Interesting, because I ran into at ICM one day, I was thrilled with Russell Johnson, the professor from Gilligan's Island.
Oh, that's
so
great.
I'd seen him there a few times. He was reading. But I always got a kick out of that because I was always a kid at heart. I think anybody in showbiz, you become friends with a lot of actors and people, but when you become friends with or or meet somebody you grew up watching, you still have that little kid and you go, wow, this guy's my friend now. And I don't want to start dropping names here because most of those people are dead. But I remember...
No, thank you, because you just that actually what you said really touches me because I always feel bad that there's still a giddy part of me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And you just, thank you. I love hearing that. You're right. It's the little kid in me, right?
Oh, I remember, I go to Gelson's all the time in my neighborhood. You know, the local supermarket right down the street. Now there's like 20 supermarkets. But I would always see Kevin McCarthy from, the Vision of the Body Snatchers, you know?
Yeah.
They're here. You know, he's at the end yelling about the pods on the back of the truck. So I would go up to him like an idiot. I'd run into Artie Johnson from Laughing. I always see Paul Stanley, who's more of my generation, but I'd always see Paul Stanley in the supermarket. And every time I see him, I run to the other end of the aisle and I yell down, who likes to grocery shop and rock and roll every day? Who likes to rock and roll night and grocery shop every day? And he always rolls his eyes. Okay, but I see Kevin McCarthy, and I wait for him to get to the vegetable aisle, and I pick up a big ear of corn or something. And go, they're here, they're here. And my wife would go, "You're such an idiot." I go, "I know."
That is funny.
And then, but there'd be people that there was another guy who he was the principal in Animal House. Famous, I'm sorry, I forgot his name, but he was also the sheriff in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, when the clowns put their fist up his butt and make him talk, like
Wow.
Yeah, you saw that movie?
I didn't see it, no.
He saw it. It's great film.
Mondo saw it also.
Yeah, great film. Anyway,
It's called Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Oh my God, it's hysterical. Yeah, it's a real campy, made on purpose. But the clowns are kind of scary. It's everything you hate about clowns as a kid that found scary. But it's great. You got it. You got to go.
I'll check it out. Okay,
go check it out. Anyway, so I always watched. I watched it with my daughter when she was little, and I ran into him at that supermarket. God, I know. Look, I know all your work, but Killer Clowns. And he said, "How do you recognize me from that?" He goes, "It's one of my favorite movies." But I guess he doesn't get recognized a lot from that. The same way that Larrabee, you know.
Right, exactly. You know, it's funny. I was waiting to get into a doctor's office, and I recognized somebody who does get recognized a lot. But I think that people don't know exactly what they know him from, although maybe they have a movie or two, and that's Stephen Tobolowsky.
Oh, yeah, I see him all the time at a little restaurant down the street from my house, and I always say to him, what's his name from Groundhog Day?
From Groundhog Day?
Oh, God. And I have to Google it sometime. He goes, he gets that every day.
Yeah. And we had him on this show, and he's got. I read both his books. Before
he wrote 2 books?
He wrote 2 books.
You must have a lot of time. There's so many books out there, and you read 2 of his books.
Well, I'll tell you why. He was going to come on the show, and I felt I should read his books. He sent them to me personally.
Ned Ryerson. Ned, hey, it's me. Ned, hey, Ned Ryerson. Right, when he steps off the curb, the insurance guy. And I said, I know you get this all the time, you know. But you get, I'm sorry. So what were you saying?
No, I was just saying that he's got great stories. His books are really entertaining. And then guess what he has? A podcast, as it turns out. The guy's got his own podcast. You know?
Of course. Well, a lot of people want to keep busy. I, on the other hand, am torn between. Look, the quarantine is horrible. It's I know so many people in the restaurant business. There's so many people out of work, and it's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing. But the thing for me that I've enjoyed is the fact that I kind of have to stay home, and I'm not going to travel, and I don't want to go anywhere. And the clubs are closed anyway. But my girlfriend and I have all these miles, and we thought we could go somewhere. We don't want to. We stay home. And I go to her house. She lives 5 minutes from me. And so I'll go to her house. We'll have dinner. She'll come to my house. And then she'll go home and watch one of the girly shows she likes on Netflix. I go and watch something I like on Prime Video. And we get together on the weekends and watch things together. So it's perfect living by myself, you know, and it's just nice to have it. But the scary thing is I don't think I'm ever going back to work again. And I'm torn between the fact that I'm happily retired and don't have to work again, at least for the next year or two. If I die within 2 years, I'm okay, as far as money goes. Finances should hold out a year or two. And then I'm torn between that, happily retired, I've done my time, and then waking up sometimes and feeling like just a washed up over the hill club comic. So it depends what mood I'm in.
Wow.
You know, and I'm both, and I can deal with it. So doing your show, this is like a big thing for me.
It's a big thing for us. It's so funny. It's all how we see ourselves, isn't it? It's so weird. What you just described is like I can live in the world of I didn't get that, I didn't do that, I wasn't aggressive enough about maintaining control over that, I let that guy F me over.
Right.
There's a lot of that in my life. Or I can go, hey, I love what I'm doing right now, and if I had lived that other life where I'm cashing big checks and following that route toward other shows, etc., I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now, and I really enjoy what I'm doing now.
Yeah, but I see this underlying anger. I mean, the dartboard you have with Fritz Coleman's picture on it, that's just... But
but it really is true. You think, yeah, but you'd have $20 million. Don't you think that would? Maybe you're right. Okay. I mean, I think that if I had that kind of money, what I could do is a lot of documentary films that I want to do. There's a lot of other stuff that I can't do right now because I don't have a ton of loot. But I think what I'm doing day to day, I'm a broadcaster with radio shows, and I'm talking to interesting people about interesting things.
And me.
And you.
Right.
I think that's great. And I guess what I'm just talking about is, and you touched on it, when you wake up, you can say, hey, I kind of like this. I'm hanging out. I've done a lot. My body of work, in your case, is really respectable. Yeah. Or I can go, wow, my life's over.
But you know what? Look, you have a beautiful backyard, a beautiful home. Pretty good-looking girlfriend, but no, you have a very nice, and I have the same thing that you have. A nice backyard with a nice little pool, and I, sit back there with a glass of wine or my green juice in the morning or my coffee. And read
when
the
do you
paper.
start drinking wine during the day?
Oh boy,
do you have a rule?
No, I try to live by that old alcoholic rule. I'm not drinking before noon, and then a couple of mornings ago, I just started getting into bourbon. And right before my workout, I said, I'm just feeling stressed out for no reason, just what's going on in the world. And you read about Trump and all of these idiots, and you read about
martial law
and Black Lives Matter, which is important, and you read about COVID, and you read about and all these different things, and you go, I'm just stressed out for the rest of the world. I maybe a shot of bourbon, and I took a shot the other morning like 11:30. Look, warmed up my gullet. It's after I took my vitamins, of course, and I was so mad at myself for drinking before noon, I did an extra strong workout. I said, I'm going to really work this off now. Wow. So maybe the combination of bourbon, exercise, and vitamins. It's a trifecta.
Yeah, it's unorthodox, but it may seem to...
I start drinking, maybe with lunch I'll have a glass of wine, 12, 1, 2 o'clock. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then 4 o'clock start cooking. I go through a bottle of wine every night, and which is, compared to all the alcohol. When I was on the road all the time as a comic, there was the cocaine, there was at least a bottle of vodka every weekend. Yeah. And then I come home and drink wine with dinner with my wife, and there was way too much alcohol. The thing is, I get blood tests every 8 months, 6 months to a year, and so far, my liver's perfect.
And why do you get blood tests 6 months to a year?
I should more like once a year because,
Oh, you take Lipitor or something?
I didn't want to take it, but I have to now. My blood pressure.
Then they make you take it. Right.
Well, I didn't have to, but when you think about it, it doesn't bother me.
As long as the liver panels are okay, from what I understand.
Well, here's the thing. I go to a homeopathic doctor and I go to a regular doctor. And the homeopathic doctor is like, not a vegan, not as crazy as you.
No, homeopathy certainly isn't as crazy as veganism.
No, but it's more like vitamins and herbs and things, which is great.
Sure.
But she eats meat and does everything normal people do. But we're not. I promised myself I wouldn't bother you about that today because you offered to.
You lasted a little while.
Well, no, but I'm not going to get into it. You said I have bagels for you, but I know I'm going to have that vegan cream cheese, which I've tried. I'm not a big fan, and and I have coffee with oat milk. I'm not a fan. It's like. It's like having sex with a transsexual. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure it's like the impossible pussy, but I don't want to eat it if I don't have to. You know what I mean? I'd rather just have the regular meat.
Wow.
Yeah. There's your analogy for you right there.
That is it. Thank you.
The impossible pussy. I'm sure it's all terrific. It's not for me. And, no, it's funny though. No, but I every 6 months to a year I'll have my blood checked because my liver and my blood pressure and my cholesterol, and it's not a big deal. Go to the doctor and have a little checkup. But the funny thing is that I don't eat a lot of red meat. And I try not to eat. I know you don't eat any of that stuff, but I try to eat a lot of fish. Either sustainably farmed or even better yet, wild fish. So I eat so much fish, and fish is supposed to be so great for you. I have a blood test a couple of months ago. Mercury poisoning. My mercury level is so high, I had to cut out fish for a couple of months.
Yeah,
and I'm
going. That's a real thing.
Yeah. So I know that you don't eat any of this stuff, and I see why.
Well, it's the reason I don't is for humanitarian reasons, but that is absolutely a fact that we have. And, where the mercury comes from us, like there's no...
I know. It's from us.
Right.
By the way, don't get me to the humanitarian reasons. You can eat sardines. The mercury's very low. They're very healthy, full of protein, all the omegas, and nobody cares about sardines. You kill a sardine, you can sleep with that. Sardines would eat us if they could. You don't think they would eat us? You don't think sardines were giant?
No, I don't think so.
So you open up a can of sardines and you looked at them with no head and they're skinned. You look at them like they were just like some graveyard that was... Is that sad for you?
For me, Bobby, nothing makes the point like watching one of those fish flopping around, gasping for air on the goddamn ship as they yank hundreds of thousands of them out of the...
Don't watch the video. Just go and look at them once they're in the can. Once they're in the can, it's all done.
I think it's just all so sad. I want no part of it.
Oh, really?
But I understand. But the mercury thing's a real thing. Do you remember when Jeremy Piven had to leave that Broadway show in New York because of mercury poisoning and no one believed him?
Right.
Now, I don't know. Maybe he made up that story about mercury poisoning.
Right.
You think he did?
I don't know. I have no idea. But I remember hearing both sides.
Yeah. But I remember he went on Letterman's show.
Right.
And actually said, people think I'm making this up, but this is a real thing. I ate sushi every night, and I ate sushi for lunch, and blah, blah, blah. And I have mercury poisoning. Honestly, I wasn't all that interested in whether it was true or not and what was going on with Jeremy Piven, but I remember that was an incident,
Well, when it happened to me, I kind of tend to believe him more now because, like I said, we know, look, I love red meat, and I just try not to eat it too much, and I love chicken. And, to do without fish for the last 2 months has killed me. I don't know how you live your lifestyle. I can see why you're so miserable now. But healthy, but clear-headed, more time to think about how miserable you are. It's a vicious circle.
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
There is that.
But anyway, but it's funny that I was trying to eat so healthy and do so well, and my cholesterol's off the charts, no butter. I go, some of you just can't win sometimes.
Yeah, you're slavish about the workout. Like, I don't work out at all. I want to.
You can.
I just...
You get an elliptical trainer for your living room. You have plenty of room here.
I know, I do. But the way the new house is set up, she's got the place set up like a museum. You can't put... and she wants to get rid of... We have a lot of crap there. We're not really moved in. But there's not... Like, you couldn't put an elliptical...
Well, between her mouth and your ego, there's not a lot of room left in this place for anything.
All right.
Wow. No. Whatever. I didn't see the whole house. It was my first time over. But you can put one in the backyard right under there.
Yeah, I might do. Man, that's a guy. You know what?
It really is the best workout from what I've read and every trainer I've worked with. If you want to do one thing outside of swimming is, the elliptical trainer. I do it.
Because it's not weight bearing on your joints.
It's really good.
Yeah, my joints are. This is a real old man thing, man. I can't understand this almost arthritic thing that's happening with all my joints.
I got arthritis in my hands.
It's crazy.
I play
man.
the drums. I shouldn't say play the drums. I have 2 drum sets and I bang the drums. I love my drums, but my fingers are freezing up and my shoulder, and it's years. I have so many friends that's been happening to them since their 30s because they all played sports. So I wasn't a sports guy. I grew my hair long and smoked dope and had incense and did the right thing for a teenage kid. But eventually, it's all going to catch up to you. Things are catching up. No matter what you do. And it kind of killed me. Like a couple of months ago, I turned 65. How old are you?
Not 65. I'm younger.
Oh, my God. You're being such a girl now.
I am. I'm more girlish than you could ever imagine.
I can imagine.
But I'm a few years younger than you are.
Fritz Coleman would tell me how old he was if I asked him. He doesn't mind talking about his age. He's a lot older than both of us. Okay. My point being that I have so many friends like in their 50s and 60s, all this stuff was happening to them. But the fact that it's also, a lot of it's hereditary and genetic too. I'm sure of that. Because our parents, I don't know about your parents, but you look at pictures of people, your parents when they were 35, they look like they're 80.
Yeah, they looked older for sure.
Everybody wore, smoked cigarettes inside. And
my folks didn't smoke or drink, which and they're still around. They're 90.
And they eat fish though. They're not vegans, are they?
They're not vegans.
No wonder they're so healthy.
Did you realize, though, that you'll be in line first as a result of your age for the COVID vaccine?
No desire to get the COVID vaccine.
Oh, really?
No. I don't. Look, it's becoming scarier and scarier for people everywhere, especially in California. Now in England, where it's mutating.
Right. So why wouldn't you want the vaccine?
I'm going to wait and see because I would like to see when wait. Because if everybody gets the vaccine, nobody's going to get COVID. I don't have to worry about being around them. I can just, hey, you get the vaccine? Fine, I can be around you.
Well, not everybody's going to get all right. I was talking to a doctor last night. He said, I just got it. He said, absolutely, it's safe. He said, I looked at the protocols and blah, 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 blah. Now, maybe you could get me a doctor who says, well, that's BS, but...
Look, I'm just happy I can get it to Trader Joe's at the senior hours between 8 and 9 o'clock Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Is that what they do? It's 65 plus?
It's funny. When I turned 65, I go, hey, I could go. The COVID thing started a few months earlier, and they were letting all the grocery stores had, a supermarket, the old senior hours, the old fart hours, 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, because people were pushing old people out of the way to get toilet paper.
Right. So they decided, okay, I feel, well, you know what? I'm only 64 now, and they're not going to really bother me about this. And I'd go and I'd hunch over a little, and I'd walk with a limp just to make sure I get in. Then I realized you only have to be 60. Okay.
Oh.
So can
wow.
you? So you could do that, right?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, you're old enough. Okay,
Yeah.
I almost got out of here. So you can go to Trader Joe's Tuesday, Wednesday. You have one at the bottom of the hill between 8 and 9 o'clock. And
That's a great. I've been doing delivery only though. We do. I don't really go to the grocery store.
Really?
At all. Yeah, I'm a little paranoid.
wow, I'm sure.
But I'm sure I'm dropping my guard in other ways. Let me tell you, we do this thing. I'll give you an example of dropping your guard. Just last night, we do this thing where we secure the house. I set the alarm. I double check. I check the doors already, but she says, "Are you sure?" So I go around the house. I check all the doors. They're all locked. Boom. Set the alarm. Go to sleep. Wake up in the morning. She goes for her walk, and she texts me, "You left the garage door open all night." So last night, needed the garage, access to it, and I left the garage door open all night. So my point is, we're vigilant on one level, and then we're total idiots and drop our guard on another. On COVID-19, I have deliveries every day and from Instacart and all the rest. But then, I'll go to some store, and there are a bunch of people without masks. And
Really?
Yeah.
In California, you've seen where?
Well, I'll tell you where I went to a store. I don't want to say which one, but there were people all over each other. It wasn't that they weren't wearing masks. It's that, some people are wearing the masks and they only covered their mouth and not their nose. And
Right.
more to the point where I really think I got it, if you could get it, was at CBS. At the end, I'm there with all of my articles and belongings that I'm going to pay for.
Right.
They ring it up, and then they say, "Well, what's your loyalty number?" And I go, yeah, let me put it in. And I put my finger on the pad that's been touched by, 400 people, and I mess it up. So I have to go back and touch it again. I mess it up again. Then I go back and touch it again, and I get it right. Okay, then I knock over all the stuff that I have on the counter, and it's all on the floor. So I have to pick that stuff up from the floor after I've just touched the pad. So this COVID, if it's there, is all over me.
Yeah, I don't think it's
You don't,
really.
then when I bend over to pick up the stuff, this is absolutely true. My sunglasses fall off of my face and onto the floor. It was like a
Yeah.
bit.
I see why you don't like going to the store. I can manage all that stuff. I know my number at CVS. I hold on to my stuff. I have my basket.
See?
I check out myself. I get to the car. I put the Germex or Purell on my hands.
Yeah.
There's only, and then I wash my hands when I get home. Look, there's only so much you can do.
Right. I'm told, by the way, that that's the least likely way to get it. If you get COVID-19, you'll get it likely from being in the proximity of someone else who's speaking or laughing or singing or whatever.
Yeah.
You're probably not gonna get it from some surface that they touched.
Right. Exactly. Well,
Anyway.
like I said, I very rarely go see people, and it's great because all my neighbors say, "Oh, you guys should come over for the holidays." And COVID. No, I'm not. That's why I don't want to get the shot. I want to tell people. I never like going to people's houses. Period. And my girlfriend's like, "Oh, come on, we should go over and see Tim and Tracy." And I don't want to. I see these people all the. I don't have anything to say. I don't like chit chat and small talk.
Yeah.
This I know I'm out of here in a half an hour.
It's so weird, but because your friends, your circle of friends is substantial.
Not
and
really.
Yet come on. We've already talked on the show about these dinners that you used to do in New York with all the, with Colin Quinn and all the other comics. New York comics were there with Woody Allen and God knows who else.
Yeah, God knows who else. Yeah, those were interesting
David
dinners.
Blaine and so on.
Different. Yeah. Those were interesting dinners.
Will it ever be safe to? Not really. It can't
Safe to what?
To mention everybody at that dinner. Probably not. I would suggest not.
Now people are going to no,
It's like if you were at a dinner with, like, let's say Mussolini.
Right.
Is it ever safe to say it was actually at Mussolini's house, that dinner?
Yeah.
You go, no, it's never safe to say it.
well, I don't want, yeah. Well,
Like, a figure who is viewed as evil. The half-life on that is so long that you
Well-
could never mention it.
Well, there's comics that don't like me to mention them on the air. It's not a matter of dropping names. It's people like their privacy and don't want to know. Like
Who's that? Give me an example.
Well, no, I've had dinner with Woody Allen a bunch of times. He put me in a few of his projects, but outside of saying that, people, what's Woody like? He's just a really nice guy, and I don't really have any stories to tell about him, but I just don't like talking about other people.
Sure.
When Robin Williams died, I was one of those guys that they called because they knew I was from San Francisco, and people knew I knew Robin.
Sure.
Every television station and news outlet would call me because I'm sure first they would try to get Billy Crystal. When Billy would never comment, they would try to get Whoever, and then they'd Bobby
Whoopi
Slayton.
Goldberg or whatever. Right.
It's like when people try to get Fritz Coleman, they can't get him, they come to you.
Oh,
okay,
man.
same kind of thing. So
So cool. Bobby, I was a weather guy ages ago. It's not what I still do.
Well, that's
okay. It's like I worked as an escort years ago. Let's not call me an escort anymore.
No,
you know what I mean?
Well, that's because you get older and you can't escort anymore.
Right.
And there's people that do the
I
weather.
aged out of the
better.
escort business.
No, okay. Anyway, no. But so the point being that, I just.
You don't like to mention everybody.
Well, I didn't want to keep talking about Robin, and
Sure.
Robin dies. People want stories,
Robin was already big when I was in the Bay Area. He was already in Hollywood and huge.
Right.
But he would come back, and when he would go, onto the stage at the Zoo, for example, which is the worst comedy room I've ever sat in. I mean, in terms of, I'm sure you have worse, but I mean,
I started there.
I couldn't understand when I got to San Francisco. They go, "Oh, you got to go to the Holy City Zoo," and I love comedy and love comics and love that world, and so I was there a lot, and I never understood why that room became so hot, because for an audience it's very hard to see the stage, you know what I mean?
Wait. First of all, the stage is right in front of you if you get one of the 30 seats right in front of you.
That's what you have to do, though, Bobby.
There were only 60 seats. The place.
There's a big pillar there. You remember?
I barely remember it. I mean, I remember it because it's where I started when I was 22.
There are a lot of view obstructed. There are a couple of serious view obstructed.
I think me and Dana went on Carvey. I think me and Carvey went on the same night for the first time, first or second time together. And I don't know what happened to Dana, but I went on to fame and fortune. But no, there was electricity in the room because back in the original day when it first opened up, it wasn't just it was a small little folk club. They did comedy a couple of nights a week, and it was before all these other comedy clubs in San Francisco. Years later there was Tommy T's, and there was a Great Punchline where I really cut my teeth, and there was the other cafe, and everybody's having comedy nights. But back then, the electricity, because nobody had really seen a lot of stand-up comedy outside of maybe the Merv Griffin show and watching Elaine Boozler or Jay Leno or The Tonight Show. There's no Netflix or Showtime or HBO, so comedy was a novel, new thing.
That's a great point. That's a great point.
It wasn't new. There was Vegas and there was a Borscht Belt, but in San Francisco, unless you saw Robert Klein open at Frucci Havens and a big Bill Graham club, there wasn't a lot of comedy. So that's why people liked it. And when you're starting out, if you're going to bomb, it's not so bad if you bomb in front of 40 people. When it's a giant room, and there's people talking and drunks, and it was a cool place
I see. When you put it in that context, I see why it got hot. Let me ask you, when at the very beginning, and I never really, and you'll pardon me because I didn't expect to be getting on this, but just because the Zoo, it makes me remember. At the very beginning, did you struggle? Because your style is way different than
Whoa, boy. Did I struggle?
Did you struggle, in other words, with your act, or did it spark right away?
No. You show me, outside of maybe Dave Chappelle, who I saw when he was 17, or Bill Hicks when he was 17, opened up for me. Those guys had this natural ability. I'm sure they had many, many, many tough times too. But you talk to any comic, and it was a rough road. It wasn't like being in the Navy SEALs where you had to go through boot camp and you might die. But it was, it's a tough thing. It was why more people don't do it. But no, oh my God.
Your style, your aggressive style, did you always have that from the very beginning?
My first night on stage, and I still have the tape somewhere. I don't know where it is. And I should probably get rid of it. I don't want anybody to ever find it. It's like having women's panties or kiddie porn in your closet. You hide it, but when you die, somebody's going to find that stuff. So if you don't want anybody finding this stuff, I'd say get rid of it now. So it wasn't that incriminating, the tape. And I don't even know if the format was before cassettes. I didn't even know what it was on. But I think it was a cassette, actually. I had this high-pitched kind of prepubescent Jay Leno kind of, my voice sounded nothing. It was really high. I sounded like Leno, and my voice got like this from years of yelling on stage. I used to smoke, but it was not so much from smoking. It's from not using my voice properly. And I've had nodes taken on my vocal cords. Rod Stewart, I think, had the same thing. And a lot of singers will get nodes on their cords. And now, when they were taken off, I think many years ago, the doctor said your vocal cords are calloused from all the yelling and smoking. Not only smoking, but working in smoky clubs. If you can remember back then. Even when I quit smoking, you walk out of a club and you'd stink from cigarettes.
Sure.
Not just the performers, but everybody. So night after night of that, you know what I mean? And smoking cigarettes and dope. So my voice, I had this high-pitched voice, and my jokes were really lame. Oh my God, I could repeat some of them to you. But I remember doing Evening at the Improv, one of the first comedy shows. And that in the comics on Fox, the local Fox.
Oh yeah, with, what's his name hosting?
Oh my God. They had different hosts over the years.
Yeah, because they were talking to me, would you be interested in hosting that show? I'm like, I'm not a comic, man. You want a comic hosting that show. Wayne Cotter? No.
Don Herrera, I think, hosted for a while.
Is it Wayne Cotter? Oh, Dom Herrera? Well,
I think Wayne Carter hosted it.
Okay,
I think I know Dom hosted it because I was a voice. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Comic Strip Live with your host, Dom Herrera, the Comics Tonight.
Dom Herrera is the real thing.
Yeah. So I did a couple of seasons of voiceover.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
wasn't hosting the show, but the next best thing, I was a voice introducing the guy that hosted the show. So it was kind of, they throw me a bone, you know what I mean? But anyway, so if you look at some of those early shows, and probably a bunch more on YouTube. Norm Crosby's Comedy Shop was my first television show, and God was that bad. Norm just passed away, you know.
Oh, right.
And he would have Norm Crosby. Oh my God, I did the show, and oh my God, I had this little Jufro and a shiny forehead and a jacket that didn't fit with big shoulder pads. I got to look like a turtle, and I had this high voice, and I can't remember the jokes. I watched it once, and I look back and I go, okay, for a 22-year-old kid who's only been doing stand-up for a year, I wasn't that bad.
Well, if you made Norm Crosby's comedy, she must have had a pretty good 5 minutes or 7 minutes or whatever.
No, they put probably everybody on the show in L.A. Yeah, it was, I remember when I did the Young Comedian special. That one was pretty good. I did like the 11th annual HBO Young Comedian special. Rodney Dangerfield had hosted the first 4 or 5. And then he stopped doing it, so they'd have guest hosts. I did it with John Larroquette hosted one year. And so I did it. And they had kind of run out of comics by the time they got to me because, there were the 11th one, each show used 5 comics. So
right.
by the time of the 11th one, there'd been over 50, 60 comics that have done the show. And I'm in L.A. going, well, okay, I know Seinfeld and Bill Maher and Dennis Miller and Norm Macdonald and all these guys were a little bit more ahead of me as far as television credits and street creds, so they were getting the shows. And then all of a sudden I see people I started out with, Paula Poundstone and Dana Carvey and Kevin Pollak, and going, hey, what about me? And finally, they got to me. So that was like Norm Crosby's Comedy Shop. They went through everybody at the Improv and Comedy Store, and everybody got a chance to do those shows.
But you didn't do at that time. Oh, maybe by the time you got into the young comedian special or whatever you're talking about, the 11th annual,
right?
You were developing that aggressive style where you go, yeah, you Chachi, how long you two been together, or whatever. That wasn't the beginning.
That happened from opening for rock bands. And when you play all these comedy clubs, you get assholes in the front row, and you get drunken bachelorettes, and you get people who, this before, everybody now is looking at their iPhone, all these millennials, and those are douchebags. They're sitting there looking at their phones and taping the show and TikToking their friends, and that's why I'm so glad I'm out of it. I never made it to that giant level where I'm playing these big theaters. And with Jerry Seinfeld, he still loves it. And you see Dave Chappelle go on the road. These guys are making, $1 million, $500,000, and private planes. And you're not playing, the side splitters and staying in a Holiday Inn in the outskirts of Tampa with no car and a Burger King next door, no place to fucking eat. And then you're going, all right, you know what? I don't have a name badge, a name tag. I'm not asking people what size shoe they want. It's a cool job. It's what keeps you from killing yourself. But the point being, dealing with so many jackasses in the audience. And people think they're funnier than you. And they're drunks. And a lot of the comedy clubs, they didn't police them well. Some clubs were right on top of it. If there was a heckler, they went right over. So that's where that whole aggressive style happened. And I think also the fact that I started out as an MC, opening up for all these great comics like Michael Keaton, like Elaine Boozler, like Jay Leno, Jerry Seinfeld, who was my age, Bruce Baum, Denny Johnston, all these guys from Make Me Laugh. I had to prove myself. So really aggressive. That New York thing came out.
But that became this great thing that you were known for, the Pitbull of comedy. And
great thing, I guess great. Yeah.
No, I mean, come on. Well, look, you play this down. I've mentioned this before, but I think I was so proud of you when you actually got that deal in Vegas. You were in the main room at Hooters. No, but you can say Hooters, but dude, that was a real place on the Vegas Strip.
The competition in Vegas, when I did this, it was about 7-8 years ago already, I think. But when I went into Hooters, it was right off the Strip. And the competition there was very fierce in Vegas. And one of the first comics of my generation, who when she was younger actually opened for me, and I love her very much, Rita Rudner.
Sure.
And Rita went in, and then George Wallace, and they both learned how to do promo in that town and how to do press and who to talk to. I remember Leno saying to me, you should go in and take the mayor out to lunch, and you got to schmooze and go around and talk to concierges. And and then again, I had all day to do this. So by the time I talked to Rita's husband, who was a brilliant marketer, he goes, look, I don't know what to tell you anymore because the competition in this town has become so fierce. Every other block is half-price ticket brokers. Every concierge is sending people to their shows. Nobody wants to go to Hooters at the end of the Strip. You're not even on the Strip. And it was between the Tropicana and there was all these hookers and free adult porn magazines and drunks and bums. I mean, just to get there was a gauntlet you had to walk through. So I went to try to get all the locals to come because it was a good comedy show. I had great opening acts. I had to offer something. But what am I going to offer the Penn and Teller don't have at the Rio, the George Wallace? And every week you could be sure they did either Bill Maher or Jerry Seinfeld or Robin Williams or some giant comic was in town. And then there was across the street Louis Anderson. And then there was Carrot Top on the other corner. And then over at the MGM, if it wasn't Robin Williams or David Copperfield, it was a giant fight, So my competition...
Well, when you put it like that, you're right.
It was astounding. And what I did was, because I was always pretty good at this, at least once a week, because you don't want to become too annoying and greedy, I'd go to the concierge desk, and I'd go, hey, I'm Bobby Slayton. I'd give him a CD. I'd give him these beautiful write-ups that I got. And the local newspaper there, and the local columnists loved me. So I got some great, great write-ups, and I won all the TV shows. And there's only so many times you can do the TV shows or the radio shows, And I did all the rock stations. And then I came up with this great idea. Since they called me the pit bull of comedy, I said, I wonder if they make chocolate dog shit. And you go online, you better believe they did. So I went on, and I bought this chocolate dog shit. And and I ordered it retail. When I found out the company that made it, I went to the wholesaler, and I bought like 150 things of chocolate dog shit. And I took them and put them in those little Chinese takeout boxes. I got at Michael's Arts and Craft Supplies. And I was very lucky because I found the takeout boxes with little doggy bones on it. I go, this is perfect. Then I went to buy that Easter egg grass, and I put the grass inside the Chinese box with the dog shit and a review of my show and free tickets. And I went around and gave it to every concierge. And Norm Clark, the columnist there, who was like Herb Cain, was in San Francisco, and Walter Winchell was in the old days. He's the big gossip columnist. And he heard about it, and he wrote about it. And I went to every radio station. I drove around myself and gave everybody chocolate dog shit. And it was...
That is fucking brilliant.
And I never tried the dog shit. I'm sure it was delicious. But with the grass, and then I wish I still, Yeah,
that's brilliant. I thought you were going to say, and when I talked to a couple, I'd make sure that they got a couple of these or whatever. But it's even more genius than that. You took care of the people who are likely going to be able to push people toward your show.
Well, what was also good is that you had to do stuff in that town. Again, I didn't have the giant, press machine behind me like these other people. Hooters, did some nice publicity for me. It was fine.
But you had to build media awareness as well.
And it was really, really tough. I mean, I got some front page, articles and, where to go, what to do this weekend, Bobby Slayton, and, it would make a dent. But again, Hooters would give away a lot of free tickets, and I got a salary. They didn't care about selling tickets. They wanted people in the casino. And the only thing that really sells casinos, I learned this over the years, are the slot machines. That's 80% of their income is the slot machines, not the shows. The buffets are loss leaders. You got to get slot machines. That's where the casinos, at the time at least, would make their money. And who plays slot machines more than anybody? Women. What woman's going to go to Hooters? So Hooters decided they have to have a show that men and women couples will like. And I'm thinking, my show, the way misogynistic, sexist, racist, I didn't say anything to them. I said, you're paying me a salary. And the way I attacked my wife and attacked women in general, I mean, it wasn't Sam Kinison and that brutal, but...
No, I hear you. But there is something fun. You used to have about that material, even as you talk about it that way. You had a discipline there. You were not gambling when you were in Las Vegas. No. I remember that.
No, and what I did was also, I made a video, which is on my website, bobbyslayton.com. I hate to ask anybody for anything. And I thought what would be a great video to open up my show, I'd have a comic do 20 minutes, and then I would do an hour, but I wanted something to really get them. So I put together this little montage of Viva Las Vegas and Vegas movies and Robert De Niro, Casino, and Elvis singing, and Bugsy Siegel, and it went right into all these comics making fun of me. Jay Leno, why would you go see Bobby Slayton? And so Hooters would pay for this. And it was I had to cut the video back. It was 10 or 15 minutes. Robin did it for me, Louis Black, the Smothers Brothers, David Brenner, Dana Carvey, every big comic, Rita Rudner, George Wallace. Yeah, I'm playing over at Rio. Why would you go see Bobby Slayton? Well, the guy's an idiot. And I put it all in there. And it was a great opening to show people that, look, I'm a force to be reckoned with. These people all know me. They're friends of mine.
Right.
And they all said horrible things about me. Alice Cooper did it. The only non-comic, one of the funniest people. So everybody that came to Vegas said, hey, could you guys do this? It'll take 30 seconds. Can never get Seinfeld to do it. Always too busy for me. But everybody else, Bill Maher.
That's so smart.
Anyway, I did what I had to do, what I could do. And then what we did, you talk about those comic dinners, in New York. We put together a comic lunch about once a month. Me, Penn Jillette, whoever would show up. Anthony Cools, who was a hypnotist. David Brenner, the mayor, would always come.
What a great lunch that is. You're saying all those Vegas comics and acts.
It was always Carrot Top, George Wallace, whoever's visiting town, whether it's Don Marrero or Gilbert Gottfried, and the mayor would always show up and tell us great stories about Vegas in the old days.
Well, that mayor knows some heavy-duty shit that went down.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, Oscar was...
He died, I think, or no?
No. His wife took over. He was the mayor for two terms, and now his wife is the mayor. And he's got a steakhouse downtown.
Right, I was just about to say he's got the steakhouse. I don't know why I thought he had passed away, but...
Well, anyway, so that was fun. So we did what we could do. And, a lot of people said, God, it's so great Slayton has a room. And what's interesting, people knew I was using comics to open up for me. And I would use a comic, and I'd pay them pretty well because the comedy clubs paid shit. And I paid the comics.
You've always been generous with that
Looking
stuff.
back, I shouldn't have done it. I overpaid them. I figured, I'm making all this money. It wasn't Jerry Seinfeld money, but for me, it was a lot. It's 3 or 4 times what the comedy clubs were paying. And they put me up in a condo right next door, and they didn't do no other act in Vegas had their, accommodations paid for. The resident comics. So it was really good.
Yeah, your life was good.
But you want to know something? I had no money up until then. Because, I was supporting my wife and my daughter in this, nightmare of a house in L.A. And so, when you buy your daughter a car, your wife a car, I wasn't living like some boxer with his entourage and the gold hubcaps, but I was, I had a personal trainer in L.A. And then I joined the gym. And I bought wine at Whole Foods. That you got to be rich to do that shit. But you know what? I never had money. But it's the fact that I wasn't doing drugs, I wasn't seeing hookers, I wasn't playing golf, and I wasn't gambling. I feel I have money now. And I would take my opening acts out to dinner every night. And I would, after the show.
What a cool thing, man.
And it was great. But and then I would, I worked Wednesday through Sunday, 1 show a night. They started for 2 shows. And I convinced Hooters, I said, look, we're only doing half a house each show. Why don't we just do 1 show? Pay me the same. We'll do 1 packed show. And they said, okay. And then, so I got him to do this. And looking back at it, it was a pretty great gig. So I would work Wednesday through Sunday. Sunday night, the show was over by 9:30. I would jump in my car. I would drive home because the adrenaline's going through me. And about halfway home, like at midnight, I go, I'm exhausted now. But I don't want to stop. You can't turn back. You're halfway. It's like, so I'd get up at 2, 3 in the morning. My daughter would be on the couch with a boyfriend watching some lame-ass show. I'd go in to kiss my wife. You stink like garlic. Get off me. And what am I doing this for? I came up to see my dog. He wouldn't stop fucking barking. And so I did this for my son Ed. So I felt so guilty leaving my family who didn't really want to see me.
Yeah, that's great. Was it a year? How long? A year and a half? How long were you there?
I was there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And like I said, an apartment right next door. So right after my show, I just went back to my apartment. Or I would take the comics out to dinner. It's funny, Vegas, not like the old Vegas, because even then, outside of the coffee shops, all the major restaurants close at 10 o'clock.
Right, it's weird. Because your notion of Vegas is that it's an all-night town, but the reality is any place you really want to be closes early.
Well, in the old days, of course, the restaurants stayed open all night. And when the Rat Pack was playing, the casino, everything was rocking. But all the restaurants during the week closed 9:30, 10. Maybe during the week, 10 or 11 on the weekends, maybe. So there was a few restaurants that would stay open. But if you don't want to go to the coffee shop, so I need to do that with the comics, and it was and then work out during the day.
Do you think Vegas was better back then when the mob ran Vegas?
It was before my time, but when I talked to all the guys who were back then there and everything I've read, if you were an entertainer back then, it seems like it was the greatest place ever. And I'm not even talking about Elvis or Sinatra, but one of my best friends before he passed away, and a guy I grew up with, talked about earlier, people you grew up watching, and then they become one of your truly best friends, was David Brenner. And Brenner not only had great stories, he came from Philly, so he knew a lot of mob guys in Philly. And, I don't know how much he embellished the stories, but it doesn't matter, because not only did he have stories, he was a great storyteller, and he loved telling the stories.
We saw Fritz Coleman and I, who you've referenced in this, now we've referenced him a couple of times.
I got to do his show right after, so we have to finish this
He
up.
and I both... Well, we're in Vegas at the same time and went to the Brenner show together. And it was great. And it's just as you say, it's stories. I mean, he's doing his act, what I mean? So every story pays off. But wow, I mean, he was one of those guys who bridged from the early days, you're saying, to the...
Well, and you talk about comics, you talk about the books. David wrote like 3, 4 books. I found them very entertaining.
Yeah.
Back then he would do cruise ships when it was cool to do cruise ships. You weren't a comic, staying with the crew and, eating with the crew. And that's when they paid, before my time again, thousands and thousands of dollars. You stayed in a giant suite and you were the main entertainment. You weren't playing some crappy comedy club on a Princess Carnival cruise with all these fat newlyweds. It was classy, I guess, the way he talked about it.
But
anyway,
he seemed to bridge both worlds, not the early days, but in a tail end of the early days into the 70s or whatever it was.
So, and then you have these guys that opened up for Sinatra would tell me stories. And, the mob was always great to whatever you wanted, when you wanted it. I guess it depends who you were. You know, if they didn't like you, maybe that wasn't such a
Bad
good time.
place to be, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a mob guy on who worked Vegas. He was the technical consultant on Casino.
I read the book.
And his...
He wrote a book.
yeah, his Frank...
I've read all those books. Every book ever written by a mob guy or wannabe mob guy.
And then we went to Vegas and took his mob tour of Vegas, which was really good.
Yeah.
And he talked about how they skimmed from the skim room and how in gym bags they used to take all the cash
It's
out.
like Casino, right?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. He took us through the kind of the real life beats of Casino.
Yeah,
And
well, I wasn't in that part of the glamorous life of Vegas. I was at Hooters off the strip.
I remember seeing that show and I really liked it. I thought it was great. More to the point, I think what you're talking about is I just think that's great when you get your life to a place where, you know, it's working for you.
Yeah, well, that all fell apart, and like everything else. And that's why I'm here doing your dumb show.
Yeah, well, this has been fun, though. I've really enjoyed it. Bobby, the new year, you are...
Yes, we never talked about, the annual Christmas, holiday, Kwanzaa,
Yeah,
Hanukkah, New Year's show thing.
Yeah.
You know, as a matter of fact, wait, this is what we should have talked about earlier. But
Last year, you were
Yes.
asked by Bill Maher
Yes.
to join Sarah Silverman and I think a bunch of other people in
Yes.
Hawaii. I mean, a
Yes.
handful of other...
Yeah.
And they fly down private or something, or they
Right.
put you in some ritzy place.
Right. Okay. And again, the joy of this, last New Year's Eve, you know, I used to work every New Year's in San Francisco, and I haven't worked in a long time New Year's Eve. It's not a great night to work, you know. I always used to try to work harder. And I'm going, how much more can I yell at people? How much funnier can I be? This is all I have. People are usually paying $15, $20 to get in. Now they're paying $50 to $100. I can't. What do I do, you know? And I used to buy really nice bottles of champagne and pour it for people in the front row because I felt bad for them. But anyway, I hadn't worked in years, and COVID hit in March. So the last show I did was New Year's Eve. I came to your show when you were in the studio, and I was about to go with Bill Maher and Sarah to do these shows, and I was kind of dreading it because I knew we were taking a small private plane, and it was very nice, but I didn't know if it was going to be fun. I mean, I love Bill. I love Sarah. Hadn't seen Bill in years. I didn't really know her very well. But we got on the plane with a couple other people. Joe Walsh was on the plane with his wife, who turned out to be a friend and a great, great guy. Him and his wife, Marjorie.
Wow.
Incredible
that's
people.
So cool.
And I told Joe as soon as we got on the plane, because it's true, in high school, the James Gang, his
course.
first big group was one of the first bands to play, I think if not the first band, rock and roll band to play Carnegie Hall back in 1969, 70. And I was there, and I got thrown out for smoking pot. And somehow I snuck back in. And I said, Joe, that's the last time I saw you guys work.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. First of all, I didn't realize the James Gang played Carnegie Hall.
There's a record out of it, a CD.
I didn't know that.
James Gang
No,
Live.
I don't follow
71.
shit like
Yeah.
that.
James
Okay.
Gang Live from Carnegie Hall. And I went to see them. I smoked dope in the bathroom. And I was 15, 16. I think it was 71.
They threw you out? How did that happen?
Yeah, they were kicking everybody out. They
An
threw
usher
everybody
came
out.
over?
Yeah, and I just somehow took my ticket and walked back in again. I don't know how I did it.
Okay, anyway, so now you're on a plane with Joe Walsh and his wife.
You know, no, it was nice. Again, I said we're dropping names. But no, and Bill was great, and Sarah was great, and we had great food. Anyway, the shows went spectacular. And we did like 2 shows, and we got there a day early.
And you told me before, but I don't remember. How do they work out who opens? They alternates, right? Or something?
I said, well, of course, Bill had it worked out beautifully. You know, he's done this for 9 years in a row. Bill would come out and open up the show, and he'd do this whole marijuana thing, this whole thing about pot, and then he'd bring out Willie Nelson, and Willie came out and did something, and then
Willie Nelson was on the same bill with you?
he wasn't on the bill. Willie lives there, so
Oh, I see.
we went to 2 different islands. So one island, Willie, I guess if Willie's there, he comes out every year and they read from this book about pot. It's hysterical.
Okay.
And then Sarah came out and she did 20, 25 minutes. And then Bill would come out and do a little bit more time and bring me on. And I only had to do 20, 25 minutes. And Bill would come on and close the show. And then he brought out Woody Harrelson, did something. And then the next night, we go to the other island and Eddie Vedder comes on stage and does a song with Joe Walsh. Because Joe did a song both shows. And then Eddie Vedder came out and did one with him. And then we all sing at the end, smile though your heart is breaking. Bill does it every year. And so we got Willie singing along and Eddie Vedder. And it was great. And Sean Penn came over backstage and he loved my show. It was a thrill for me, the people who I've always admired. And then all of a sudden, okay, great. Now that's over. I'm going back to Yuck Yucks and, who the hell knows where I'm going. It sucks.
But that's, in a way, we've come all the way around, haven't we? Because the little kid in you, which is what we were talking about before,
Yeah.
it's wild that you got a chance to hear Sean Penn go, wow, man, you were so funny. I really liked it, or
It was
whatever.
great. Sean Penn was going crazy. And it meant a lot to me because I'm a big fan of his. And it seems like such a serious son of a bitch. I mean, he is a very serious, guy. But my girlfriend was sitting next to him and said he was just him and Eddie were dying. You know, and that was so nice that people. I love Eddie Vedder.
Sure.
I mean, you know, when you're a big celebrity, I'm sure Jerry Seinfeld gets all the time. I don't get it. I'm playing some crappy comedy club, and as great as my show is, nobody sees it, nobody cares. So it's nice to do. That was my last show. So the good thing is that Bill's not doing his show this year, obviously, because of COVID. 19, by the way, just in case you didn't know which COVID it was. COVID 16, he could do it. COVID 12 is no big deal. That's for pussies. I had to take cough syrup. COVID 12. That's nothing. But 19, you got to watch out. But when 20 hits, oh boy, watch out, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, but if that would have happened a few months later, or a few months earlier, COVID, that show would have been canceled. And, you know, we went out for some beautiful dinners, and then we went to a nice party at Shep Gordon's house with Alice Cooper. They had a big party, and
wow, this is unreal.
Local musicians playing, and Dave Mason got up and played at Shep's house. And it was just nice. But everybody was so nice, and everybody was so laid back. And, you know, then, you know, Bill took us on. Then New Year's Eve, you know, after the show, they kept this restaurant open late for us. And they have the restaurant, they have a beautiful table with fireworks and
what island was that where you were?
I forgot which one we went to first, but, you know.
On New Year's Eve, you were on the Big Island?
Yeah, and Sean Penn and Eddie Vedder joined us. There was a table of like 20 people. Anyway, It was just a really great night. And it was nice. But here's the best thing. So after the show New Year's Eve, we fly out at 2 in the morning. We were supposed to stay, and Bill didn't want to stay. We'll fly at 2 in the morning, which is good for us because my girlfriend and I had a flight the next morning at 9 o'clock to go to Florida and stay at the Breakers for a big wedding, one of her clients. My girlfriend's in the jewelry business. So the plane lands at 6 o'clock. We go to my house. We shower, have bags packed, go right to the airport, and fly to Florida and stay at the beautiful Breakers Hotel for 2 days. And as much as I dislike weddings, one of the greatest weddings I ever went to. So it was 4 days. And after that, COVID shut down, but at least I got to enjoy, whether I'm ever back in show business again or not, that was some great memories.
That is you're right, a great moment to go down on.
I'll show you some great pictures here, which after the podcast is over. But
that's a great moment to finish with.
Yeah, so nice.
I mean, to finish your life with, Bobby. I mean, if you were to die tomorrow,
yes,
it would be good for this podcast, by the way, because more people would. This is his last interview.
Yeah, it'd be great.
But I'm just saying, for you personally, what a great coda to your career and life.
That was nice. You know, it was nice. Yeah. And you can't worry about all these people doing better than you and making more than you. You know what? And I hate to sound so maudlin, but, you know, it's like, God, people are just, you know, there was this great article, Paul McCartney and actually Taylor Swift, the new issue of Rolling Stone, and Paul McCartney's quoted in there about saying the quarantine was great for him because he gets to stay home and be more creative, but he really shouldn't say that because there's so many people suffering, and it's so horrible out there. So right now, you know, I'm trying to enjoy the holidays. My girlfriend and I stay at home with some great wine and some great food. And I think about all the people. You know, I used to go to the Laugh Factory and feed people. Sure. I can't even do that, you know. So,
no, it's pretty awful. That's why I'm glad we had a chance to laugh a little bit here, to visit with you, which is an annual tradition. But you're right. It sucks. I'm hoping the vaccine, which Bobby isn't taking, but I am.
I'm going to get it. If you want to borrow my ID and tell people you're 65, you know, I have. You kind of, I mean, you don't really look like me, but you could say, you know, he's had some work done. In LA, they'd believe it.
Bobby Slayton, everybody.
And I have nothing to plug. No gigs.
I love it.
Go out and buy your SKECHERS. That's all I have to say.
Get more of The Edge on Stitcher and iTunes, or go to our website, edge-show.com.